Alpha and Colt were on alert, the others waiting for instruction. We walked the board. The boards creaked and irked, which I didn't remember before when we had been here. In fact, the whole town seemed unrecognizable. As I was in my own thoughts, I was snapped out of them when Alpha put his hand up, stopping us before we took another step. He looked to the right of a shop, putting his finger to his lips. He went into a store, then came back out to the doorway where a cider barrel was. He removed the lid, reaching his hand down into the cider. He pulled up out of it, black hair followed by a young girl who seemed to not be a death breather. She was very thin. I could see all her bones. Alpha took her by the waist, pulling her out as she held to the barrel for stability. "Well, what do we have here?" She looked so full of anger, but she could barely stand as she continued to drip and breathe heavily. Alpha wasn't helping the situation, so I went over to her. Her skin seemed so raw and wrinkled. It looked like if I were to touch her, her skin might just fall off the bone. She was beginning to shake. "Please sit down, it's all right now." The girl's face was just as angry when she looked to me, but she listened. I could only imagine the pain she was in, and it was so cold. Alpha looked to one of his men. "Give her your fur, you look too comfortable." He growled, and the pack member did as he was told, giving it over to Alpha. The girl, no more than 12, shrugged away. Turning her head in disagreement, Colt took it from Alpha and placed it on her shoulders as carefully as he could, but she continued to fight at it, and in a stern tone, Colt spoke. To her, "Listen, it's cold, and I know from what I see you want to live, or you wouldn't be alive now, would you? You're tough, I can see that. So let's get you dry and warm and a meal to get your strength back." The girl looked to Colt, who was now sitting beside her. Out of nowhere, quicker than I had seen anyone before, she swiped Colt's knife from his boot that was next to her, her feeble hand shaking, but Colt didn't move as she held the knife close to her, and at the same time, Colt Alpha was in just as much shock. But I could also see he seemed impressed at the same time. I didn't know what to do. All I could do is trust in Colt, who was keeping Alpha at bay from heading toward her. "I see." Colt looked to the girl. "I can do it if you need me to." But the girl shook her head, her wet hair sticking to her face, her eyes determined. "All right, then." Colt stood. The girl looked to all of us, then Colt again. "They won't stop you either." We all were puzzled, but then she began slicing. At her neck, Colt knife was sharp, but her skin was so soft it went in like a hot knife to butter. She swallowed hard after making a cut, closing her eyes in pain. Then reaching in with her fingers, she pulled out the chip from behind her neck, placing it on the board next to her and stabbing it over and over with the knife, until it was in pieces and no longer glowing. Standing, she walked toward Colt, handing him back his knife. I could barely believe she had the strength to even walk. Letting out a sigh, she looked us up and down. "Thanks." "So the spicy one talks then?" Alpha smirked as she paid him little mind. "I can now, thanks to this guy." "You couldn't talk before?" "Not for a week or so. Couldn't eat or drink either." That seemed to trigger something in her, and she ran into the store as we followed her inside. She looked around for a bit till she found some jerky she started to tear into, slamming a can of peaches to the ground, busting a hole in it, and some hard bread, practically choking it down, picking up the crumbs. "If you couldn't talk, eat, or drink, how did you survive?" Colt gave her some water as she drank it down. "I was here with my family for years. They were finally able to cure my stomach issues, and I was about to have an operation to remove this." She lifted her wet shirt. In her stomach seemed to be a type of a hole with a stopper none of us had seen. "This before it makes food go directly into my stomach in the way of liquids. When people started having issues with eating and talking, many tried to help them, but any forced attempt ended in the other person having the same problem. We thought for a while it was catching, so we started to quarantine, but it wasn't long before we realized what was happening. And again, if we tried to remove another's chip, the others would turn us into one of those things." She pointed out the door. "So Dad, he came up with a plan. Not a very good one, because he was already fighting hunger when he came up with it, and we lost him 3 days later. But he made a filter for my tube, and told me before I changed to sit in that barrel, the gravity of the liquid would keep me fed and soften my skin." "Why did you wait to take it out then?" Why didn't everyone just take their own chips out? Alpha questioned snarkily as she whipped her head around to him. Dr. Threepwood wouldn't let us? You think many didn't try. Do you know how hard it is to even do? I had been enrolled into the hospital to become a doctor. Threepwood made sure to start with the adults. My dad realized what was going on. It was by age, starting with the older and the very youngest, because who wouldn't want to save their baby? All that ended up happening was both dying. I can still hear the babies crying through clenched lips. That doesn't answer my question fully. How did you remove yours then? The girl rolled her eyes. I don't know. Honestly, I just wanted it to be over with, and my grades were never the best in incisions. But better than turning into one of those things. It isn't what I wanted, so I figured if I just did it and it didn't work, one of you could finish me off. If I may look closer, Alpha, I have a thought. The wolf, who gave up his fur coat, looked to Alpha and the girl. Alpha nodded as the man went over, looking her over, then bending down to her level, he touched her wound on her neck as she flinched. I took out a few of them, and I notice her chip is slightly more to the side of her neck than the others. Perhaps when it was placed, it wasn't fully working or in the right place. Alpha's eyes were practically glowing. That is a thought. Alpha looked to her, but she's spicy. And girl, I don't trust you. For what we know, you could be that. Threepwood we are after. It's not the first time a Harlt's used a child to try and save themselves, and it won't be the last. The girl smirked back at him, shaking her head in amusement. Then think what you will, but it isn't me. I couldn't help but speak up. Then do you know who it is? The girl looked to me. I certainly do. Not that you will believe anything I have to say, apparently. Colt stepped up. Try us. The girl finished the last bite of her jerky, rubbing her nose, still shaking as she held to the fur around her. The whole town looked desperately for him, just as much as people were dropping like maggots off a wound. Finally, after much searching, Dr. Mila found a file that had been transferred to some guy, and it must have been right because she was trying to get to the gates to speak. To someone about her finding only for her to be tied up by those who were left and under his control. Still, he isn't in those things, he can just control them. But whatever he transferred himself to, he wanted it to be kept hidden. But Dr. Mila for days kept screaming out a name. I'm guessing she was hoping someone would hear. Her? I sure did, but I guess none of you did. I can only assume it's who Threepwood is hiding in. What was the name then? Alpha growled. The girl Furnius. Are you sure? Colt spoke up. I heard it enough times, I looked to the group. It would make, since he would have had Furnius's body to work with, and it was at the same time. And they were in the same room. I just don't like to think of it. If Threepwood has Furnius's body working again, maybe there is a way to get his conscience back into his body. I couldn't help but speak my mind, but Colt looked over to me. Do you remember how rotted the other body Threepwood was using? I don't think it will be even a slight possibility of helping Furnius back into his body when Threepwood is done with it, and from what I've seen, he's going to need another body soon enough, and none of these will be of any use to him, and we need to be careful to not let him get a hold of one of us. Alpha looked back to the girl. Well, what should we do to this girl? Tie her. Up? Alpha laughed out. The girl snarled, I don't care, do whatever. Colt was irritated with Alpha's words, but he could also see the truth in them. Well, for now I think we should take her to camp, get her warmed up, cleaned up, and keep watch on her. I'll go with her, the one wolf spoke up. Just then 2 of the other pack's men came back with Henry. Meal is all right for now, though barely stable. They were able to move her, but it's still a good chance she won't make it, but at least she isn't feeling any pain. Thank you for the update, Henry, and your quick return. I do my best. Who have we here? I haven't seen you before. Henry put his hand toward the girl, but she kept her hands by her side. The name's Celia. Careful, she's full of spice, that one. Alpha smirked as he continued. All right then, men, you did your work with Henry. Here. Well done. Now take this girl to camp. Keep a close eye on her, get her fed, and let her wash up. Yes, Alpha. Snarl, go with them. As well. Yes, Alpha. Snarl looked to the girl. Here, let me carry you. No, I want to walk. But without argument, Snarl picked her up. You're too short. You will get my fur coat full of dirt if you walk. She stopped fidgeting. She barely had the strength to begin with, but words still came. It was already dirty. They left with her quickly. "Do you think she will make it?" I asked out loud, but in a whisper. Alpha was the one to answer. "Don't you worry about her. Snarl lost a daughter around her age from a terrible sickness. I could feel he wanted to help her. From the moment he laid eyes on her, he will be mindful of her well-being more than others. And when she fattens up and gets her strength back, who knows, she might make a fine wolf with that type of spice. I'd like to see her at full strength in a fight." "Well, then it seems with everything settled, we should continue in the direction we were going." Colt looked out the doorway. "It will most likely get dark soon. I'd like to get to the hospital. Before night, we should bunker down if we can find a well enough place." Everyone was in agreement, so we walked on and on and on. The light was getting dimmer. When we finally made it to the area where the hospital was, the metal door was unlocked, but the rubble was filling up the entire entrance. "Well, we can't dig." Our way in, Alpha kicked at a large piece of rubble. "There is a way around back that Meal used with me." Henry spoke up. "Was it like this when you were here last?" Colt asked Henry. "No, that's the strangest part. They were almost done with digging it out the last I saw of it." "Odd," Colt replied, as did Henry, with, "Very odd indeed. I wonder why?" Alpha looked at the structure. "Probably collapsed on itself, which means this building is still moving about. I doubt it can handle much more." "Do you think we should go in then?" Henry asked. Alpha turned. "Getting black out here, we don't have much choice in it. I like a good fight, but in the dark, well, that's altogether another factor. But I'm not too happy with the idea of being put in a corner." Colt rubbed his hand in his hair. I could tell he was tired from everything that had happened today, and his adrenaline was wearing him down. "Well then, Henry, you lead the way." "All right, if you say so. I do know of a good room that is locked from the inside, so we could all get some rest." Alpha just let out a dissatisfied huff. As we all followed Henry around the back of the hospital, this door was closed, but at least it wasn't locked. We all walked in. The lights were flickering on the white tile. See, they were cleaning this area. It looked just like the front when I left. Sure enough, the place was spotlessly white. "The room is on the first floor, since from what I remember, that is the only floor in use. The elevator was damaged, and a lot of stairways were crushed. They were trying to figure out how to move out, needed equipment. Some were trying to scale walls with ropes to see how bad the damage was, but Meal didn't want anyone getting critically hurt because there would be no way to help them recover." I looked about. "Did they ever come up with a plan then?" I asked as we walked. "Well, odd enough, it was an idea I had. The cafeteria had a small area to bring food. Up and down as well as lower to the basement. It's not that big, just big enough for one person at a time to fit in, and it can be pulleyed from the inside with a chair that seemed in working order, so we would get a person to a new level and see what they could find. It wasn't much help in the long run for the machines they needed, but in the way of medicine, it helped greatly, though now I feel it might have all been for nothing." "Is that where we are going?" "No, actually, I'm taking you to the safest room I can get you to, but maybe tomorrow it could help us get about." "Then where are you taking us?" Alpha growled, impatient. "Right here." Henry went into a hospital room with a few beds, locking the door behind us, then went to the corner of the room to where he opened another door. As Alpha was scouting the room we were in, Henry opened the door, and it was a large bathroom. "I'm afraid it may be a bit small to fit everyone. We will make it work. Thank you, Henry." I spoke up. Alpha was less than amused. "At least there's running water." Henry turned on the sink, then flushed the toilet, which made Alpha snap at him. "Are you trying to give our position away?" "He didn't mean anything by it," Colt spoke up. "He can talk for himself. You do that again, Cub, and you won't have a hand to wipe with." Understand, he stared at Henry, who had his hand up. "Sorry, really, I just thought—" "There was no thought in your head." Alpha was irritated. Colt looked to him and his pack. "Nevertheless, we are all not thinking clearly. We all need some rest.